And one way I've been thinking about this, and I'll kind of have to get out of the way for you all, is this kind of axes of textbooks or books that operate in architecture that have been plotting along an axis vertically and horizontally from the layman to the expert, and from repeatable down here and to novelty above. And so what I've been thinking about is that there are certain genres like Duran's Précis or pedagogical books which train architects how to make things, which are both for delivering expertise and novelty, in the sense that architects being trained in school then learn how to design on their own, compared to something on the lower left, which is both repeatable and for the layperson, like the Sears and Roebuck homes, where you just select out of a catalog and it's an infinitely repeatable, but it's always the same. What I've been interested in is how machine learning sort of folds those together. It overlays something that's potentially repeatable, sort of kind of like robust catalog of images that are fed into a data set, but then the kind of promise that from that data set, it provokes a sort of infinite novelty, a kind of impossible situation of producing novelty in an infinite and repeatable way. So like a just kind of quick glimpse, I think, of some of the work I've been doing and what the project as an output has been is to develop a set of walls that are just using normative tectonics, 2x4 stud walls and gypsum board, 12-foot long and 8-foot high, with a certain set of just really routine rules. 2 windows or a window and a door, typical tectonics like king studs, headers, sill plates, trimmer studs, cripple studs, very normative conditions that are used to train a machine learning algorithm. And I would be remiss not to thank Edward Feng for his work in helping me on the project here. And that has been used to train a machine learning model to generate this kind of infinite repeatability. So the sort of infinite landscape of walls that have been trained on a machine learning, in a machine learning model. And so what I've been really interested in is the kind of glitches or the ways that this readjusts our thinking of tectonics or the sort of rules that exist in these walls. There's new sort of tectonic arrangements. There's new ways that materiality is constructed or rethought. So it develops into these series of walls that have these kind of like mistakes embedded in them. So there's sort of like these new novel tectonic formations that begin to emerge from there. And really what these walls that I'm making are these kind of combinations of all of the different thousands of images that have been provided. So they're really more like this, which is to say that there are types and families of walls that are in the red or the blue or the yellow family. They're being merged together into like one sort of image that then produce a new formation of wall. And what I really have been kind of like interested in coming out of this is this idea of this robust and infinite repeatable landscape. So in the machine learning landscapes that you construct, there's this thing called latent space. And this latent space is this sort of infinite tracking field, an environment where you can produce just through scrolling and really banal action, this kind of landscape of tracking a trajectory of typologies. And I've thought about that as a kind of physical space that could be infinitely expanded on and inhabited. So the product that will be virtually accessible, hopefully shortly, is this kind of landscape that students, faculty, anyone that wants to go to the Serif Gallery website can start to inhabit this landscape of walls. So I'll maybe leave it there for now and let Jose explain his project, and we can kind of delve into maybe more of the intricacies of the project.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Michael. I'm so excited to see this thing behind you right now. It looks amazing.
Thanks, Jose.
Yeah, so hi everyone. So when I came into here to Milwaukee, kind of my proposal for the fellowship was specifically to tackle this project that I've been working on for the past few years, which I've titled Trauma Urbanisms, which is essentially a series of sites that are undergoing ecological and social unrest. And for those sites, I've developed a series of architectural kind of solutions and strategies that can point to the workability of those sites, which is to say, not exactly to resolving the specific crises or the specific problems that the sites were undergoing, but rather to explore sort of the latent potentials. And so a lot of my projects in this series basically are, you know, starting from the assumption that that architecture has been fixed for a long time, and that architecture has been sort of static, and that the urban fabric is too, and that our solutions tend to be precisely just continuing that sort of lineage of determinacy. And so the kind of the projects all deal with indeterminacy instead, and sort of the notion of how do you adapt to changing conditions, basically. And for this particular, basically during this particular year, I think what's been really fantastic for me has been, no, wrong one, has been the kind of ability to test some of these things in courses that I've been teaching here. So for example, what we see right now around me is the course that I taught in the fall, titled Post-Traumatic Architectures or the Productivity of Crises, where students advanced, where students learned about trauma, crisis, and remediation theories and their application into architecture. But also born from this kind of seminar and from the studio that the studios that I've been teaching here, was this sort of frustration that I realized that tackling or using a fellowship to tackle urban sites or such a large kind of problem was perhaps difficult, because it could very easily result in either like many projects, or you know, it could lack sort of specificity in terms of process, because every site is going through a different crisis. Every kind of problem that I'm undertaking is very particular. So instead, what I thought I would do is try to ask the question of what it would mean to translate the kind of urban crisis and urban solution idea to the context of a building, and specifically the Syrup building. And so the exhibition that was meant to open last week or a couple of weeks ago was called End Times: New Architectures of Urban Crisis. And you see some of the preliminary kind of proposal and research here. And it essentially would have featured work that students are producing in the current studio I'm teaching, which is the Powers of Time studio, as well as this project called A Table is Not a Table, which was essentially answering the question of how can furniture operate surgically onto architecture in the same way that one of these kind of urban strategies would operate surgically onto the urban landscape itself. And so the idea was that there was a lot of, again, malleability, indeterminacy, and that the exhibition and kind of the projects and things themselves would constantly vary and change. And in fact, for me, again, this became like a real sort of curatorial exercise in how to even design an exhibition, for example, that would feature works that were in progress and that would feature works that were constantly changing. Of course, that has heavily shifted now because of you know, because of COVID and what's going on. And so what I've transitioned into, and I go back to the slide, is just to essentially write about these things, because I think that there's still a lot of kind of uncertain things for me in this that has been super helpful for me to develop through my writing and through my kind of specifically seminar, but also studio teaching, in terms of exercises that I've given the students, but also just the lectures themselves. And so I'm working currently on 4 different texts that I hope to publish in the next two or three months. So one is specifically about the studio projects that my students are working on currently. And it's about the translation of time-based architectures that respond to carbon-driven crises into practice. So the other text is precisely about events. So in this idea of activating the public and doing things like using architecture surgically onto the built environment in the same way that you would use it in kind of urban design. There's a text I'm writing that's about events in and around architecture. Of course, a text about specifically trauma and crisis theories. And then one about time, which has been one of the kind of main arteries of my work that has developed actually during my time here. And so my expectation is, and I put powers of 10 by the EAMS here, my expectation is that a lot of this will also turn into a film or a video project that I'll share with you eventually. And specifically in the fall during Michael and I's lecture, hopefully here or in Milwaukee with you in person. I hope also to do some type of event that begins to activate the kind of spaces of the building and begins to like follow along this discourse. Yeah, so that's kind of what's cooking at the moment.
That's great. Both of you talked about adaptation a little bit, and I wonder a couple of things. One is whether or not you think that the current situation, COVID-19 and our move to online, has been able to shift your work and actually provide you with a new kind of opportunity to think about, like, post-COVID-19, what's the new trauma, in a sense, to kind of consider. And then Michael in particular, I was thinking about the way the construction industry and developers are actually talking about machine learning quite a bit right now in terms of affecting construction and supply chains and such, that I think that both of you are sort of right on the tip of something pretty phenomenal in terms of translating your work into things that could actually be helpful for the profession and the industry. So I don't, Jose, maybe we'll start back with you and then circle back to Michael.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Mo. You know, COVID has been a real challenge for everyone, of course. And I have to admit that for me, I feel like it took me a particularly long time to kind of assimilate what was happening and sort of understand it. Especially because I've been working for kind of a long time in this trauma project and talking so much about crises, and all of a sudden I found myself in a crisis, and I felt like completely unable to respond to it directly. The more time that passes, I realize that that distance is necessary, that like being away, separated from the crisis, even if we're still living it, but at least like understanding it a little bit is important. I've been writing a lot about interiority, criticizing basically for a while how architects have been dealing with interiors, or basically how buildings are made to mitigate the effects of sites and atmospheres around them, and how buildings in general become these like self-contained interior worlds. And now we live in a completely interiorized world. And so I'm still kind of trying to grasp what that means. I think, you know, even things like what we're doing right now, Zoom and all these sort of digital technologies have rendered visible the kind of possibilities that already existed, but that we maybe pushed back on or didn't like. And I'm not saying that they're right solutions, or that you know, Zoom or even in terms of teaching that any of this is the best way to do it. But I do think that it offers us certain possibilities that that we were like just not seeing before, because we were not even considering another type of world. So yeah, I mean, I guess I'm still like trying to understand this, but yeah, maybe Michael, you're muted, Michael, sorry.
Thank you. I think I would just go back to the kind of link you're making, though, with machine learning to it. And I think that one thing that's particularly interesting that has kind of come about in terms of this is the effects on logistics for the kind of like Amazon industry, the distribution warehouses that have taken place. And so I think that has been something that has this kind of like Google search, don't sort mentality implicated in it. So what I mean by that is that, you know, if we were to go and probably sort things according to like memory or recall, if we had like, I don't know, diapers and bottles, we would probably sort them next to one another. But an Amazon warehouse, and the way that machine learning can detect like what kind of logistics are most applicable, those things get changed around really rapidly, or changed around to be more efficient and effective. They find unsupervised patterns, things that humans don't see. And I think one thing about this kind of situation we find ourselves in is that it's a kind of fissure that adapts those conditions. So the things that were really useful to us and the setups that were applicable, that the machine would have sought out, like that kind of idea that maybe like salmon fillets are better suited towards like being next to the diapers than other baby supplies, for instance. That is broken by the crisis that we're in. Certain materials and certain logistics are more important than others, and we've seen this kind of play out with Amazon and other industries, that certain small businesses are left out of the chain now, and there's a kind of breaking that occurs with the way logistics are formatted. So the interests that I have in the fellowship, I think, are conceptually related and starting to unpack, like, how do you form a typology? And this is a lot of the things I've been working with my students, which everyone is welcome to join the review on Wednesday, by the way. But how do students construct a kind of methodology that, when fed into the machine, breaks that logic? And so if we can train ourselves as architects to start to see those patterns, whether or not it's like our own work in a studio or how the logistical chains are breaking down, I think it shows relationships and has relationships to things like a crisis, which reveal the way things typically work, or like the way that Amazon organizes their warehouses. Those things slip up in the times of crisis, and in ways that I think, for architects, we can detect patterns and see things critically in a way that the rest of the world is maybe not as equipped to do. So I think it puts us in a kind of interesting place relative to that, even in a studio environment.
So I know we're going to run out of time here, and I was thinking about just maybe a little bit of talking about the fellowship culture. And I know, Jose, you had an image of the Jennifer Bonner piece that you had worked on, you and Michael had worked on with students. And I just, the fellowship is something that has, we're trying to sustain here at the school. And I think that we're restarting it this year with the two of you has been phenomenal for us and to watch and see. And so I just maybe want to seek your kind of parting words to the students in particular, maybe about the fellowship, what you see it brings to the school, and maybe that kind of risk taking that you're both doing, obviously in your own research, but relative to the fellowship itself.
Yeah.
And Michael, do you want to start?
Oh yeah,
sure.
Michael,
I'm happy to. Well, I just want to take like 5 seconds to say thank you, and I know that Jose also echoes those sympathies, but to the whole school, to SERAP as a community, to the faculty that have been, all of the faculty have been willing and encouraging and supportive, enthusiastic. To the students that we've been working with on my behalf, Edward Fang, Jessica Van Dyke, Natalie Kuhl, Ian Luke, Liam Kolstad, and Marley Barnes have been instrumental in the work that I've been doing. So I just want to take a moment to thank them. And, Mo, probably more than anyone, you have been so supportive of us throughout this whole thing. So I just want to make sure that either on behalf of Jose and I, or just myself, that, and Jose, I know you have words to say, but I think the fellowship as a kind of communal experience has been such a kind of luxurious opportunity as a faculty member to experiment and use it as a kind of a laboratory. I think the students have also seen that as a kind of way it has reconceptualized the way they think about architecture, or making architecture, or thinking about architecture. I've had discussions throughout the studio this semester, breakouts after studios, after reviews, where we've had more long-term discussions, like looking further about how this kind of thinking, this kind of risk-taking can play out in the community in Milwaukee beyond the studio. And I think that fellowship enables a kind of pattern of thinking and risk-taking that, not to say that it doesn't happen in other cases, but there's a kind of a casual relationship, I think, that happens between the university and the fellow, in which that we're in a way allowed to take certain risks because we have a 1-year commitment to the university, which I think is really great in terms of how it sets up a kind of ability for us to do things that in another position we'd probably be a little bit more wary of in a sense. But I think the students really, I hope, have valued that kind of ability to see risks being taken. And maybe just like one last point is that the kind of risks that we take, whether it's like machine learning or looking into like urban crises, as Jose has done, all require an architectural framework for thinking. So we, as faculty at large, I think, approach problems that we don't know the answer to. So one of the students, Yash, in my group asked me to show previous work to the students of like that had been done. And I think they're all kind of shocked when I told them this has never been done, not just by me, but like this work has not been done before. So we're approaching it with a kind of architectural thought. And I think that's a kind of skill to take forward as students engage with cells in the future, to realize that we're like testing new grounds, but always through the framework of architecture and the kind of methodologies of architecture.
That's great, Michael. I mean, I think I want to echo all those words because I think they're like absolutely on point. And also thank you, Mo, so much for everything, but also everyone in the school, and thank you, Michael. I mean, really, the faculty has been an incredible resource for both of us. The students have been an incredible resource. Our SURF fellows, our SURF research assistants, in my case, Lexi, Seth, Hobie, and hopefully a few more to come now in the summer, but also like a million other students that have kind of interacted and getting involved with us in so many projects and things since, you know, like the Bikkies with Jennifer Bonner activity that we hosted, or the Chicago Architecture Biennial stuff that we did. So thank you all. I would say also, I mean, I talked about the kind of fellowship impact with incoming students yesterday, and I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I suppose none of you or most of you haven't heard this. But I mean, yeah, the fellows come in here basically with an expectation to do something that's extremely exciting to them, that they're extremely passionate about. So for the most part, a lot of the work is uncertain. We also go through anxiety, just like all of you go through anxiety through your design process or through your studio projects or through your seminars. And yet it's like infinitely enjoyable because we're doing exactly what we want. And I think that's something that every faculty member here is doing also. You know, they're doing their own research. The fellow just has more visibility because that's sort of the primary thing that they're doing. And they're also like excited to put something forth to the school and out there. And so I think, you know, I think everyone has been like really open to entertaining both our kind of crazy ideas and not so crazy ideas. And you know, and seeing what happens and I think I would just encourage you to continue doing that, to take a risk also next semester if you're coming back. When there's 2 new fellows, take a risk. Even if you don't like their work, if you don't understand their work, if you think what they're doing is strange, I mean, I think they're going to teach you something that's, because they care for it so much, it can leave you with a valuable lesson. Whether or not you choose to apply it, I think it's important that you still kind of go through it. I can't think, you know, I'm trying to say Michael and I are so different in so many important ways. And also we share such a common kind of language, which is just architecture. And because of that, we've had so many incredibly rich conversations. So this is all to say that as much as even our projects, our output, etc., is different, we can talk about it for hours and hours and hours. So I encourage you to do the same with the incoming fellows. As a student, just ask, probe, see what the fellows are doing. And yeah, and again, I'm extremely thankful and excited that we've been able to do all these here in UWM, and looking forward to our chat in the fall, where hopefully you'll learn a lot more about what we've done.
Well, I know that I know both of you are maybe on reviews right now, and so we have to go. But I want to thank you again for coming here, exciting our school, our students, our faculty, and continuing this conversation. We look forward to, the good thing about COVID is we'll see you again. So whether it's in person or online, we're very excited. But I'll clap for you, and everyone else is, I'm sure, virtually clapping as well.
Thank you, Mo.
But thanks
Thank
again.
you, Mo.
We'll see you in a review very soon.
Absolutely. We'll stay in touch, no doubt.
Okay.
Yes.
Take
Thank you,
care.
everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.